Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to this special edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch, where we're going to look at all things standard now that Protour Ixalan has come and gone. And as you could expect, there's a lot of turbulence this week in the market based on what we saw at the Pro Tour. So let's just jump right in and start off with what decks exactly were the pros playing last weekend. Well, here's the metagame breakdown for the first day. Now, one thing I want to point out immediately, you probably already noticed, a lot of energy decks, right? If you take Temur, 4 colors, Sultai Energy, you're looking at almost half the field there. Very interesting. You also have a big percentage of Ramanap Red, which is close to 20% of the field. Now, beyond that, you even see things like Mardu Vehicle. So a lot of the old decks still popular, still kind of the tried and true decks that the pros were going with. But you did see some other things here too. You saw some control builds, you saw approach decks, you saw Esper Tokens, which was a deck that was pretty hot coming into the Pro Tour among a lot of circles when it comes to competitive Magic, like Star City Games Opens and such. You saw Godfarer's gift decks. So there was still a lot of variety once you got past like that first about 70% of the field. Like the rest of the field was relatively diverse, which was good to see. Even Mono White Vampires, which was a deck they spent a lot of coverage on over the course of the weekend because it was a unique deck and it was performing well. It was a good matchup against Energy. All 5 of those decks made it to day 2, as a matter of fact, although none of them top 8'd. So what did the top 8 look like? Well, you had 4 energy decks, different types, of course. You just have all the same type. Sultai Energy won the whole thing with Seth Manfield's build. And beyond that, though, again, you had a little bit of diversity. You had a Ramanap Red in there. You had a Mardu Vehicles in there. You had a Godfarer's gift deck in there. And finally, things rounded out with an approach deck, a Jeskai approach. So there was at least a hint of diversity, even though, yes, the energy decks did look dominant, but you got to wonder if they weren't so much of the field, would they have been as dominant as we saw? So, I don't know. I guess that's the question, but it really doesn't matter when it comes to card values because what happened, and what people saw in coverage is what's going to be hot this week. So let's jump into the cards and see what's happening. We're going to start off with the top 10 standard cards that have lost value this week. Coming in at number 10, Growing Rights of Itlimoc, down 57 cents to 7.40. So we've talked a lot about this card over the weeks in our videos, but basically it's a really cool card, just hasn't found a place in standard because there's nothing really to ramp into right now. Could that change in the future? Yes, perhaps it could, maybe with Rivals, maybe with another set. And if that's the case, yes, it will get some standard play. Right now it is seeing a little bit of modern play in some elf decks as people are trying to tweak the elf deck and perhaps transform it into something that feels more like a Legacy Elf deck. We'll see if that works out in the long run with the meta, but it is something you are seeing a little bit of right now. It's also a great commander card, and for all those reasons, it's holding value still, but it will continue to decline in the short term. Number 9, Registrar Alpha, down 68 cents to 4.38. This card's kind of funny because when it came out, people were really high on it because of the potential dinosaur deck, which never quite got there, unfortunately. We saw that after week 1. And then this card has been steadily going down. Some of the cards from the dinosaur deck can be cross-utilized into other places. This one, not so much. So because of that, there's just not a place for it currently. I will say this, on top of all of that, Explorers of Ixalan showed us that we were going to get a copy in that product as well, which means more copies of this in the field. Now, on the flip side of that coin, though, we got a preview card from Rivals of Ixalan. Yeah, I know that's confusing. Explorers and Rivals, it's making everybody crazy. But anyway, we got a preview card from Rivals of Ixalan that looks like it would work really well with this card. So who knows? This could have some legs in the next meta. We'll have to wait and see. I do think in the short term, though, this will continue to decline. I don't think that one preview card is enough to get people really high on this quite yet. Number 8, Ripjaw Raptor, down 77 cents to 7.25. Okay, another victim of the dinosaur deck. However, this card has seen a little bit of cross-utilization here and there, and will continue to, because even without the fact that it's a dinosaur, it's still a really good card just generally. But I do think, again, in the short term, it will continue to go down. Number 7, the Scarab God, down 77 cents this week to 44.95. So this is still a huge card. It's still awesome. Don't be too fooled by the fact that it went down a little bit this week. The reason it's going down is just because the price value is really too high to be sustainable for a standard card, even if it is a mythic. There's just too many copies out there. So the card is incredibly hot. It's also a very, very good commander card. I do want to point that out too. That's another reason it's holding value as well as it is. But aside from that, this is a card that's seeing play in a lot of top tier decks right now. And because of that, it's going to hold a nice price tag, but expect it to come down regardless of game seeing play because $45 is still a really high price point. It's been coming down now for the last couple weeks, and this says a lot that this card did see some positive Pro Tour coverage and is still on the decline. That really goes to show you that it's probably an inflated price right now. So expect this to snap down to probably closer to $40 within the next maybe 3-4 weeks or so, and then we'll continue to decline slowly, I think. Number 6, Carnage Tyrant, down 78 cents to $18.22. Another card that was a big part of that dinosaur deck, and this is still a decent card. I don't think a lot of people want to give up their playsets that they picked up early on yet. I mean, this card's lost a lot of value. When Ixalan was coming out, it was going for $27, $30, which was crazy, but that was due to the anticipation of the dinosaur deck, which didn't pan out. Now you have players that have these cards, and I think they're just going to wait for rivals as opposed to just selling it off and just kind of roll the dice and see what happens, because there's a good chance that maybe we get another shot at that dinosaur deck with this next set. If it doesn't pan out there, expect this to really drop fast. But I do think between now and rivals, this will slowly decline. Number 5, Torrential Gearhawk, down 81 cents to $18. This card is still seeing play in control builds. It's still a good control card, but there are other options for control to close out games now. So it's not as critical, and it doesn't stand up well to cards like Abrade. Abrade is still very popular. Of course, Ramonette Red is still a very good deck. It also shows up in other builds, like, for example, Marty Vehicles. So there's a lot going against this card, but it's still decent. It will decline, but it will decline slowly at this point. Number 4, Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh, down 90 cents to $10.77. Nicol Bolas, like some of the other cards we've talked about, just doesn't have a foothold right now. It saw a little bit of play early on in some control builds, but for that casting cost, the card just doesn't quite do enough. There's just other cards that are just more streamlined, more efficient, and standard right now. Still a great commander card, and that's why it's held the value that it's held. But again, expect this to continue to decline. Number 3, Jace Cunning Castaway, down 96 cents to $8.46. Similar story to Nicol Bolas here. The card is pretty decent, but just doesn't have a foothold in standard. The raw power behind it is good enough to eventually maybe see some standard play before it leaves standard someday, but not right now. There's just nothing that it really gels with at this current time in the meta. Because of that, this card will still aggressively lose value. Number 2, Hostage Taker, down $1.47 to $11.72. Okay, this card is still a great card, don't get me wrong, but it is seeing a little bit less play now because a lot of players are starting to reconsider just jamming 4 of these in all decks. Some players are starting to pare this down to 2 or 3, which makes sense because people are finding that if you can't immediately cast what you're stealing, the card's not always that great. It becomes a 4 mana cost tempo play, and you can do other things that are a little bit better for 4 mana. Now, don't get me wrong, this card's not going away. It's still going to see a ton of play, probably for as long as it's standard legal. It's awesome, but people are just rethinking the numbers with this one. So that's going to take it down a little bit. But secondly, and more importantly, this card spiked really aggressively a couple weeks ago when it caught some people off guard and just looked amazing in competitive play. And when that happened, we saw a big price spike, which couldn't possibly sustain. It's a supply and demand game. You can outrun high supply with a little bit of hype, a little bit of frenzy, people all trying to get their play sets for this meta and the next metas to come. But eventually, your big supply of these current era Magic sets are going to catch up with it, especially this one being a rare, not a mythic rare. This isn't Magic of 6, 7, 8 years ago. There are a lot of these cards out there, so be really careful when it comes to this. I just don't want anyone to overspend or overpay for these cards, especially when there's a lot of hype and a lot of excitement around them, because there's always going to be a snapback, and that's what you're seeing right here. Coming in number 1, Gideon of the Trials, down $1.59 to $17.10. And this is a card that had a huge price tag coming into the release of Ixalan because there was a lot of speculation that maybe this time Gideon Tribal could be a thing with the Planeswalker rules change. Well, it didn't really pan out, unfortunately. However, the good news is this card is seeing play. It's seeing play in some modern control builds, seeing play, of course, in standard approach decks, control builds. So yeah, Gideon actually did pretty well for himself, and the only thing, though, is the price point is still a little bit high for the amount of play that it's seeing. So I do think this will continue to trend down over the coming weeks. All right, let's move into the cards that have gained value this week. Coming in at number 10, Treasure Map up 24 cents to 4.33. Now, going into the Pro Tour, there was a lot of excitement around Abzan tokens and even Esper tokens, maybe more so Abzan though. And there was a lot of players having some decent success with that deck. Now, unfortunately, even though the deck did show up at the Pro Tour and had a little bit of limited success here and there, it didn't top 8. So this card is going up a little bit this week, but I would expect this to probably stabilize and maybe even start going down at this point. Number 9, Godpharaoh's Gift up 26 cents this week to 141. Okay, this is interesting. This is the opposite effect. Basically, Godpharaoh's Gift is a fine deck. It's been hanging around. It looked really good when it first premiered, and then it kind of started to disappear. Made a surge back, of course, when the standard rotation happened. And then again, it just started to maybe decline a little. And then it showed up at the Pro Tour, and then a copy made it to the top 8. So guess what's going to happen? Yep, some of the cards from this deck are definitely going to be hot this week. And that's okay, because I think it's still a good competitive deck. As a matter of fact, I think you're going to see a lot of these at Friday Night Magic, and there's definitely nothing wrong with that. I think it could definitely win some tournaments, especially some smaller ones. So do expect this card maybe even to trend up a little more over the next couple weeks, because it is so cheap right now. Number 8, Concealed Courtyard up 41 cents to 6.40. And how many Mardu vehicle players gave up on that deck and sold their Concealed Courtyards to pick up Botanical Gardens? Well, probably a fair amount. Now, this week, Mardu vehicles did top 8. So again, there's a little more excitement around that deck. We see this card take a bump up. I mean, it's not exclusive just to Mardu vehicles, of course, but that is one of the main places that it has seen play. Number 7, Glint Sleeve Siphoner up 52 cents to 2.96. So, Energy Decks had a huge week. No surprise that this is seeing a bump up here. Number 6, Legion's Landing up 71 cents to 5.99. Now, this card, of course, has been a key part of those tokens decks, which has made it pretty hot recently. But on top of that, it's also part of the Mono White Vampire deck, which, even though it didn't top 8, it was shown a fair amount during the Pro Tour coverage. It was the deck, especially considering how well it did on day 1, that the coverage team was trying to spend a little extra time on, just because they knew later in the tournament you're going to see a lot of energy, a lot of Ramanap Red, and a lot of Mardu vehicles. So they tried to focus on something that was kind of the underdog deck. So a lot of people saw the deck. It definitely captured some imaginations, I'm sure. And there's a lot of people probably putting this together. You're going to see it show up in Friday Night Magic, if nothing else. Number 5, Nissa, Steward of Elements, up 83 cents to 7.13. Energy Decks running this out of the sideboard at the Pro Tour is the main reason for the bump up this week. Not to say that that wasn't happening at all before the Pro Tour, but the Pro Tour coverage definitely solidified this as a great sideboard card for those decks. Rampaging Frostodon up 98 cents to 4.60. So this card before the Pro Tour was kind of considered a sideboard card for Ramanap Red, and a good one. But during the Pro Tour coverage, I think maybe that changed a little bit, because we are starting to see some Ramanap Red decks run some of these in the main, some in the board. We also saw this out of the board in Mardu vehicles. So it gets some increased play this weekend with the Pro Tour coverage, and because of that, yeah, it's getting a bump up. Number 3, Botanical Sanctum up $1.26 to $11.66. Key part of the mana base for these energy decks. Whether you're thinking 4-color, Sultai, Teamer, you name it, this is a key part of those decks. Number 2, Vraska, Relic Seeker up 620 to 23.85. So I said last week that I expected Vraska to have a pretty big week, and she did. She's gone up quite a bit. Again, showing up in a number of places. Sultai Energy, though, maybe being the most popular, but other good decks as well are running this card, like Abzan tokens. So yeah, this card goes up, and I do think will continue to go up, maybe for another week or so, until people kind of get the scramble done and get their copies, at least for now. And then she might stabilize a little bit. I do think she was maybe undervalued a couple weeks ago, and some people were overlooking this card for a while, but not anymore. She's going to go up a little more before she stabilizes, I think. And number 1, Angel of Invention up 631 to 11.99. Well, I mentioned it before, Godpharaoh's Gift decks. This card was really mellow, not doing a whole lot. Godpharaoh's Gift decks hit the scene later on. This card got a nice little bump, and then as they started to whittle down a little bit in the meta, this card was going down, going down, going down. Well, this weekend changed all that. It's amazing what a top 8 at a Pro Tour can do, right? So, now it's also important to note that this card was part of that Mono White Vampire deck, which did get a lot of coverage at the Pro Tour, even though it didn't top 8. What's going to happen with this card? Expect Snapback, first off. It's a great card. It's going to see a lot of play, especially at Friday Night Magics and such. But once people get their copies, or maybe get their copies back if they sold them, they will start to go down. This is a big increase. Expect a pretty decent snapback pretty soon on this one. All right, with that being said, those are the cards for today. Just a real fast reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to support the channel and what we do here, one of which is our Patreon page. You'll also find some links to products on Amazon, a lot of Magic products there, among other things. If you make a purchase there, no matter what it is, we get a small percentage. And then finally, Flipside Gaming, like you heard at the top of the show, they've offered a promo code for our viewers. A lot of stuff there. Check it out. Hopefully you can save some money and support the channel at the same time. With that being said, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.